remarks.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's a pleasure to once again welcome all of you for the 2021 Mountain East Conference Football Media Day. In competition, members of the Mountain East Conference have had their greatest NCAA successes in their collective history since the founding of this league in 2013, including the University of Charleston claiming the 2019 Division II Men's Soccer National Championship in a 2-0 win over Cal State Los Angeles at Highmark Stadium in nearby Pittsburgh. Thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, they're still the defending champion as we enter the fall of 2021. That title is added to a series of national championships our members have produced. It was the second national title for Charleston in men's soccer, along with Wheeling University's women's volleyball national title in 2015 and Notre Dame College's multiple national titles in men's wrestling. There have been multiple other programs that have reached the national title game as well, as you all well know, including both West Liberty and Fairmont State reaching the men's basketball national title game over our histories. Those successes among our MEC members are a collective point of great pride for our league. But I strongly believe that our membership should be equally proud of what we've managed to accomplish together during the 2020-21 academic year. Despite the many challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic created and continues to create, our institutions remain focused on making every effort necessary to provide our student athletes with the opportunity to play if we could do so in an appropriately safe fashion. After what was nearly a 9-month layoff, we were able to return to competition in early January of 2021 and provide a season for student athletes in 23 sports in one semester. In many ways, it was one of the most, if not the most memorable semester in our history. Throughout the planning stages and after our return to competition, tireless efforts were made by our athletic administrators, athletic trainers, sports information directors, administrative staffs, by our coaches, and ultimately by the student athletes who had to continue to test negative in order to be able to play. There were multiple Division II conferences that didn't play at all last academic year. There were many others that didn't provide an opportunity for competition in its fall programs, and in some cases, winter as well. All of our student athletes were afforded the opportunity to play. In basketball, for example, more than 96% of our contests were played through the course of a 16-game regular season. We knew that football with such large rosters would provide a greater challenge, and 9 of our 12 programs played at least 4 contests in what was an abbreviated 5-game slate. And at the end of a modified divisional schedule, 2 undefeated teams out of each division played in the first MEC football championship game, with Notre Dame defeating Charleston to again claim the MEC title. Similar to other conferences at all levels of NCAA competition, the Mountain East has been preparing for a 2021-22 season that we have been hopeful would be one that would be much closer to a normal year of competition. We still hold out that hope that we are in the latter stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the pandemic is most certainly not yet over. The Delta variant of COVID-19 presents a different set of challenges than previous iterations of the virus, and a significant rise in cases over recent weeks has led the NCAA Sports Science Institute to distribute guidance for managing fall training and competition that is more prescriptive than what we had all hoped for to be the case as little as a few weeks ago. Even so, I am proud to say that in my estimation, no conference has met the challenge of finding a way to safely allow our student athletes to compete during the COVID-19 pandemic than the Mountain East. And we will continue to make every effort to provide our student athletes with the opportunity to play, but ultimately their efforts to reduce the spread of disease determines how successful we have been and will be as we continue to make our efforts to play games until the COVID-19 pandemic is over. We have proven the strength and resilience of the MEC and its membership over the last 18 months. The state of the Mountain East Conference is very strong, and we look forward to the season to come. We look forward to meeting the challenges ahead as our teams prepare for a full slate of games on the fall 2021 schedule.
All right, we're now open for some questions. If you have some questions, again, if you could use that raise hand function and be mindful of your mute button to unmute when you ask and then remute so that we can get you going that way. So open for some questions here for the commissioner. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner, good afternoon.
Hello,
Was there any one lesson that you were able to take away from the spring as opposed to others, considering the fact that you were able to have something resembling a season, especially like you had mentioned, a lot of the other Division II conferences opted to not do anything?
No, our intent was to provide our student athletes in all of our sports with the opportunity to play again if we could safely provide that ability. And our student athletes, our coaches, our administrators, all the way up to our board of directors with their support of our efforts and planning. We're supportive with the goal in mind of providing our student athletes the opportunity to play. If there's any one major lesson that I think we learned from it is that if we are willing to turn over every stone, we're willing to continue to work hard on behalf of our student athletes. There's a lot that we can endure. There's a lot that we can do. We're an extremely resilient group, and I'm very proud that we managed to provide an opportunity to play in all of our sports last year.
Ryan, you're up.
All right, thanks. Hey, Commissioner, I guess can you take us back to last fall or really last summer, I guess, and kind of let us into how tough of a decision it was to not have fall sports, including football, last year, and then bring us to this time around this year where you don't have to make that decision and we do get to have these fall sports, including football, and the difference of those feelings?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ryan. Last summer, we were at a point, I serve on Division II Championships Committee, and I was part of the decision-making process that was an extremely painful and difficult one for Division II championships to be canceled. At the point that fall championships were canceled, it didn't seem very practical for the Mountain East Conference to conduct fall seasons during the fall when there weren't ultimately going to be NCAA championships at the end of that fall semester. So it seemed to make a lot more sense to have an opportunity to gain access to what we needed, particularly testing supplies, which if you recall last fall were very difficult to acquire. And as of last summer, were very expensive. They became increasingly less expensive over time. State and local entities were able to assist, including with CARES Act dollars that were utilized by some institutions to gain access to affordable testing supplies. And once we had access to those, we were then in a position where we had the ability to return to play. So we focused on a return in January. It was January 7th when we returned to competition in basketball. And in a very memorable semester where all 23 of our sports were played in one semester, certainly something that none of us hopes we have to go through again, but it was worth it on behalf of our student athletes to have provided them with the opportunity to play. So, you know, at the point that we had to make the decision to delay, we were always intent on providing all of our student athletes and all of our sports with the chance to play if they would do what was necessary to continue to test negative and be in a position where contests could be conducted safely.
Ryan, if you got another, you can keep going. Nope, you're good. Commissioner, I know you talked about it a little bit, but balancing what we're facing here with the Delta, I think is a large topic of conversation going on these days. What can you maybe share about the challenges that presents at this moment?
Well, I know that the NCAA Sports Science Institute has faced some criticism for the recommendations not being out sooner than being released last Wednesday, but having attended every biweekly update from the NCAA Sports Science Institute, I can share with you that in my opinion, they were faced with a very difficult set of circumstances. While we all would have liked to have had fall guidelines out sooner than they came out, what we all have to face is that the pandemic does the planning for us, and which causes us to have to make adjustments as they're necessary. A significant rise in cases has changed what the biweekly updates that we've been receiving throughout the summer. It seemed to be continually improving. And so we were expecting a series of guidelines that would be far less prescriptive to come out, quite frankly, before the end of July. But then as the Delta variant began to lead to a significant increase in cases, and as we've learned through the COVID-19 advisory panel that serves along with Chief Medical Officer of the NCAA, Dr. Brian Hainline, that we were simply being dealt a different hand of cards for the fall than we expected to be. And so with that, an increased, all conferences right now are wrestling with the guidelines and recommendations that the NCAA has made less than a week ago. And institutions have that guidance provided to them from the NCAA and are presently instituting those guidelines based on institutional decision as we work through as a conference what those guidelines will look like, as the NCAA has offered what they are referring to, this directly from Dr. Brian Hainline himself, very, very broad guidance, and that decision making should be more locally generated, working with state and local public health officials. We're doing that presently, and we expect to have some final determinations on exactly what will be prescriptive from the Mountain East Conference's perspective, the expectations that we have of all of our institutions, and what will be more locally and institutionally driven. That should occur over the next week or so.
From a broader perspective, it's worth noting your role as now chair of the championships committee. What can you share about what's those conversations at the NCAA level from a championship perspective, and how you are positioned to have kind of not the inside track, but be privy to some of those higher level discussions?
I can share with you for certain that it's been a very interesting time to serve as a member of the NCAA Division II Championships Committee. I'm now entering my third year of a 4-year term on that national committee, and I'm certainly honored that the fellow members of that committee have elected me as chair of that group for the next year. And based on what we've shared that is occurring with the Delta variant of COVID-19 right now, I'm very confident that we have a significant number of challenges ahead for the 2021-22 season. We remain hopeful that we are in the latter stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. From a timing standpoint, Championships Committee at this point is, and I think appropriately so, taking a wait and see attitude to see how the 23 conferences in NCAA Division II perform in conducting contests over the coming months. The first NCAA championship won't occur for more than 2.5 months. So that provides quite a bit of time for decision making with regard to how championship events at the conclusion of fall seasons will be handled and will be managed from a testing standpoint, as well as as the preventative measures that will be put in place to minimize the spread of disease.
Anything else for Commissioner Amos?